The world didn't end with a bang. It ended in silence. The kind that settles in abandoned cities, where the wind whispers through shattered glass and broken lives. In what was once the heart of a bustling town, Jackson Cole stood still, clutching the handle of a dusty backpack as if it held all that remained of his past. He hadn't spoken in hours. Not because there was no one to talk to, but because words had become a luxury no one could afford. He'd been walking for days, dodging crumbled buildings, overturned cars, and the occasional shadow that slithered across alleys too dark to trust. The infection had taken over faster than anyone had expected. One moment people were lining up outside supermarkets and gas stations. The next, cities were empty except for the things that now walked in them. Jackson hadn't started alone. A month ago, they'd been 10 survivors from the southern evacuation zones who thought heading north might be the answer. Rumors had spoken of a safe passage, a route through the Rockies that hadn't yet been overrun. But the truth? The truth was that every path forward felt like a dead end carved in blood and bone. Now, only 3 remained. Jackson. Leah, the former nurse who'd saved his life more than once. And Milo, a sharp-tongued mechanic who could hotwire anything with a battery and wheels. But even Milo's sense of humor had gone quiet in recent days. "We shouldn't stop here," Leah whispered, crouching beside an old bus. The rusted-out vehicle leaned awkwardly against a broken streetlight, its windshield cracked into spiderweb patterns. "It's too open." Jackson scanned the area. Empty streets. No groans. No movement. Just that haunting silence. But silence was never safe. Not anymore. "We just need a place to regroup," he said finally. 10 minutes. Milo needs to check his leg. Milo winced as he leaned against the bus. A twisted ankle, swollen and purple beneath a ripped sock, slowed them all down. But they wouldn't leave him behind. That was the rule. The only rule left worth following. Jackson stepped inside the bus first. The seats were coated in dust and dried leaves. Broken glass littered the floor, and graffiti covered the interior. But it was shelter, brief, fragile shelter from the world outside. Leah helped Milo limp in. Once they were settled, she handed him a torn bandage and a painkiller she'd been saving. Jackson peered out the cracked window. Every second inside this metal cage made his skin crawl. It felt like a coffin waiting to be sealed. "They used to say the virus came from the north," Leah said softly, breaking the silence. "A biolab gone wrong. Or some military test that leaked." "They say a lot of things," Jackson replied, his voice low. "Doesn't change what we're in now." She nodded. "I just keep thinking, what if someone, somewhere, is still working on a cure?" Jackson didn't answer. Hope was dangerous. It could make you careless. And in this world, careless got you killed. Suddenly, a sound echoed in the distance, a low thud, followed by the faint scraping of something dragging across asphalt. All 3 of them froze. Jackson held up a hand. No one moved. The sound grew louder. A shuffle. Then another. Milo's hand reached for his pocket knife. Leah gripped her metal baton, a tool-turned weapon. Jackson crept toward the bus's emergency exit door, slowly lifting the latch just enough to peek outside. At first, he saw nothing. Then, movement. 1 figure. Then 2. Limping. Groaning. Faces twisted in slack-jawed hunger. Eyes void of everything but the instinct to consume. Their clothes hung in tatters, smeared with mud and time. But the worst part? More followed behind them. A dozen. Maybe more. They'd been spotted. Out the back. Jackson hissed. Milo struggled to his feet, clenching his jaw as Leah slung one of his arms over her shoulder. They moved fast, too fast for someone injured, too slow for what was coming. Jackson opened the back door. A scream, high and wet, echoed from behind them. One of the creatures was already at the front of the bus, pressing its body against the windshield, smearing dried blood across the cracked glass. They spilled out onto the street, stumbling toward an alley half hidden between two collapsed buildings. Behind them, the moans multiplied. The pack had picked up the scent. Leah turned. Jackson. He grabbed a loose trash bin and kicked it over, creating a clatter loud enough to momentarily disorient the walkers. Just enough for them to disappear into the alley shadows. They didn't stop running until their lungs burned and Milo nearly collapsed. When they finally slowed, Jackson pressed his back against a cold brick wall and stared at the sky. Gray. Lifeless. As if the heavens themselves had turned their backs. There was no way back. Only forward, through the dying breath of a world that had already forgotten them. The night settled around them like a trap, thick with mist and uncertainty. Jackson, Leah, and Milo crouched in the narrow alleyway behind an abandoned bakery, their breaths ragged, hearts still pounding from the chase. The distant groans of the undead echoed faintly, fading into the distance, for now. Jackson checked the narrow street ahead. Shadows clung to every doorway and window. We need shelter for the night, he said quietly. Something with one entrance. No basements. No risk of being cornered. Leah nodded, wiping sweat from her brow. I saw a small garage a few blocks west on our way in. Looked mostly intact. Milo grunted. As long as it doesn't have a pack of flesh-eaters inside, I'm good with it. They moved slowly, sticking close to walls and ducking behind wreckage where they could. Each step was a gamble. Every corner could reveal salvation, or death. The city was a maze of shattered civilization, and no path had guarantees. The garage Leah had seen was indeed intact, barely. A small, one-story structure with a rusted roll-up door and a side entrance that creaked ominously as Jackson tested it. He pulled it open just enough to slip through, his flashlight casting a narrow beam into the gloom. Inside, the air was stale but silent. Dust floated in the light like ash. There were a few broken shelves, an overturned workbench, and an old oil drum in the corner. No bodies. No signs of recent life. Just enough room to breathe. This'll do, Jackson said. They barricaded the side door with a metal shelf, then pulled the roll-up door down as quietly as they could. Leah guided Milo to the corner and helped him settle on a pile of old jackets. She checked his ankle again, grimacing. He won't be walking far tomorrow, she whispered to Jackson. We'll need to scavenge for crutches or a cart. Something. Jackson didn't respond right away. He was staring at a wall calendar. The date circled in red was nearly 2 months before the outbreak. It felt like 100 years had passed. Leah sat down beside him. You haven't said a word about your brother. He blinked. Because there's nothing to say. He was with you in the beginning, right? Yeah. He was 17. Thought this was all some kind of video game at first. Brave kid, but not built for this world. His voice cracked slightly. He didn't make it past the 3rd week. Leah placed a gentle hand on his shoulder. I'm sorry. We all lost someone, he said. The only way forward is not thinking about it too much. Milo, half asleep across the room, chuckled weakly. If I don't think about anything, does that make me a genius? Jackson cracked a smile, small but real. Sure. Just don't die. I need someone around who can fix broken radios and complain about everything. For a while, they sat in silence, the kind that wasn't threatening, just tired. The kind that came after running, after hiding, after fighting through another day in a world that didn't want them alive. Leah reached into her backpack and pulled out a crumpled map. Most of it was useless, roads crossed out, towns labeled lost in red ink, check marks beside places they'd passed through and barely survived. She pointed to a point farther north. There's a place here. Called Echo Ridge. Remote. Wasn't on any major evacuation route. Some say it was skipped during the sweep. Sweep? Milo asked. Military purge, she said. Cleared infected zones. No survivors, no questions. Jackson looked at the map. If Echo Ridge wasn't cleared, there might still be people. Maybe even answers, Leah added. It was a fragile idea, but in a world this broken, even fragile ideas were worth chasing. Suddenly, the unmistakable sound of something brushing against metal sent a jolt through them. They froze. It came again, a scrape, slow and deliberate, against the garage door. Jackson motioned for silence and crept toward the front, crouching low. A shadow moved across the tiny window above the roll-up. Then another. Not walkers. Too quiet. Too deliberate. Jackson's heart pounded harder than it had all day. Walkers didn't scout buildings, they crashed into them. But these figures moved with caution. Intelligence. People. He turned to Leah and whispered, "Someone's out there." She pulled her baton close. Milo's eyes widened. Then came a knock, 3 soft taps against the metal. Not zombies. Survivors. Jackson hesitated. They hadn't met friendly strangers in weeks. Anyone still alive either hunted alone, or hunted others. He stepped back from the door. "Who's there?" he called cautiously. A voice, firm but not aggressive, answered. "We saw you run. We're not infected. We need help. Please." Jackson's instincts screamed at him. But something in the voice, human, desperate, made him pause. "Names?" he asked. "Silas. I've got my sister with me. She's injured. Please." Jackson looked at Leah. She didn't say a word, but her eyes were sharp. Waiting for his call. He moved slowly to the door, hand on his knife, heart in his throat. This was how it always began, with a choice. Open the door, or survive behind it. The seconds between the knock and Jackson's decision stretched like wire pulled too tight. One wrong move, and everything would snap. Inside the dim garage, Leah stood ready, gripping her baton, while Milo slowly pulled himself upright using a metal pipe jammed against the wall for support. Jackson's fingers hovered over the latch. "Silas," he called through the door, "if you try anything, you'll regret it." A pause. "Understood." With a sharp breath, Jackson eased the metal door up just enough to reveal 2 figures crouched in the alley shadows. One was a man, mid-30s, rough beard, worn-out cargo jacket, eyes wide with fear but steady. Beside him, slumped against the wall, was a younger girl, maybe 16, pale, clutching her side with blood-soaked fingers. Jackson pulled the door higher and waved them in. "Inside. Now." Silas didn't hesitate. He lifted the girl and rushed in, careful not to make noise. Jackson lowered the door the moment they cleared it, sealing the garage in silence again. Leah moved quickly, setting her bag down beside the girl and kneeling to check her wound. "What happened?" "Bit of shrapnel," Silas said. "We were in a store 2 streets over when some freaks crashed through the window. I got her out, but she got caught on a broken shelf." "What's your name?" Leah asked the girl. "Cora," she whispered, eyes half-lidded, skin pale. "She's lost a lot of blood," Leah muttered, tearing open a makeshift bandage. "I need light." Milo, still sore but moving, clicked on a small LED lantern. The glow revealed a deep gash across Cora's ribs. Not a bite, thank God, but still serious. Leah went to work immediately, cleaning the wound and sealing it with pressure strips and gauze. "She'll need rest. And water. A lot of it." Silas knelt beside his sister. His face was lined with exhaustion, but his relief was clear. "Thank you." Jackson didn't respond right away. He studied the man carefully. "Where were you headed?" "Same as everyone else, I guess." "Away." "We'd been part of a bigger group. Tried to set up camp in a church, but it didn't last." "Nothing does." Leah gave Jackson a subtle look, "They seem real." But Jackson had seen too much to trust that gut feeling. "You armed?" he asked. Silas nodded and slowly pulled out a small revolver. He placed it on the floor, pushing it toward Jackson. "I get it. You don't know us. I'd do the same." Jackson picked it up, checked it. "Only 2 bullets left. We're heading north, he finally said. Echo Ridge. Silas raised an eyebrow. You think it's real? Doesn't matter, Jackson replied. It's the only place left on the map that isn't crossed out. Cora stirred, her voice hoarse. We heard about it. Some ham radio guy said it's walled off. Power still running. Like it didn't end there. Milo scoffed softly. Sounds like heaven. Probably means it's hell. Or, Leah said quietly, it's the last place worth trying to reach. For a while, no one spoke. The garage had become a fragile island of breath in a sea of decay. Jackson walked over to the map again, laying it on the floor. Silas joined him. This route, Jackson pointed, takes us through the Ridgeway Hills. Slower, but fewer towns. Fewer dead. Silas nodded. And fewer supplies. Then we find what we need tomorrow, Jackson said. Stock up. One day. Then we move. A distant shriek pierced the quiet, and every head turned toward the front door. Not close, but close enough to remind them what waited outside. That night, they took turns keeping watch. Jackson sat by the roll-up door, knife in one hand, Silas's revolver tucked into his belt. The silence outside was oppressive, heavy with unseen threats. But inside the garage, Cora slept soundly for the first time in days, her breathing shallow but steady. Leah sat beside Jackson during the second watch. You don't trust him. Would you? I don't trust anyone anymore, she replied. But I believe people still can be good. Maybe not all. But some. Jackson let her words hang in the air. He wanted to believe that. But belief hadn't kept anyone alive, not his brother, not the others they'd lost. Only action. Only preparation. Only vigilance. Before dawn, Milo stirred and limped to the door. I'm thinking we hit that pharmacy on 6th, he said. Might be able to find antibiotics for Cora. Jackson stood and stretched. We go in pairs. Me and Silas. You and Leah stay here with the girl. You sure about that? Leah asked. No, Jackson admitted. But we're out of time. As the first rays of a gray sun crept through the garage slats, Jackson checked his gear. The revolver felt too light in his hand. There was no way back. But maybe, just maybe, there was still a way forward. The sun had barely risen when Jackson and Silas slipped out of the garage and into the hushed streets. The morning fog clung low to the ground, thickening in the alleys like breath from the dead. Every sound, every creak of their boots, every rattle of broken glass, felt amplified in the silence. Jackson led the way, a short crowbar in his grip and Silas' half-loaded revolver tucked into his belt. Silas followed close, a fire axe swung across his back and his eyes scanning every rooftop, every shattered window. The pharmacy on 6th was only 6 blocks from their hideout, but in this city, 6 blocks might as well have been a battlefield. They moved fast and low, ducking behind wrecked cars, slipping between ruined buildings, following the plan Leah had marked on the map. As they turned a corner near what used to be a coffee shop, they froze. A body lay slumped against a mailbox, fresh. Too fresh. Silas crouched beside it, checking the pulse even though he already knew the answer. Throats ripped out, he muttered. Still warm. Jackson scanned the rooftops. Not good. That means they're close. Or watching. They moved faster now, cutting through a back alley, where vines overtook the bricks and trash cans lay kicked over in a trail of panic. Jackson raised a hand and stopped. Ahead, on the opposite side of the street, stood the pharmacy. The windows were mostly intact. One of the double doors was ajar, tilted from its hinges. A faded sign reading Riverwell Drugs still hung above it, creaking in the breeze. Looks untouched, Silas said. Which makes me trust it even less, Jackson replied. Come on. They darted across the street, checking blind spots before slipping inside. The interior was cold, dimly lit by fractured skylights above. Dust coated the shelves, and most of the displays had been looted. Still, some of the drawers behind the pharmacy counter were sealed shut. Jackson climbed over the counter while Silas covered the entrance. "Find gauze, antibiotics, painkillers," Jackson said. "Anything we can carry that'll help Cora." He found a drawer jammed shut and wedged his crowbar under it. With a grunt, it popped open, revealing unopened pill bottles, antiseptic wipes, and gauze rolls. "Jackpot," he whispered. Silas moved deeper into the aisles, stuffing his backpack with what remained: bandages, a few inhalers, and 2 sealed water bottles. Then they heard it. A thud. From the back of the store. Jackson froze. Silas looked up. "That wasn't wind." "No," Jackson said. "Back room." They both crept toward the swinging door behind the pharmacy counter. It hung half open, the dark beyond it pitch black. Jackson clicked on his flashlight and pushed through. The back room smelled of rot and mildew. Shelves of expired vitamins stood crooked. A fridge in the corner buzzed faintly but didn't hum with power. In the far corner, a body sat slumped against the wall. Then it moved. "Back up!" Jackson shouted. Silas raised his axe just as the figure lunged, not a walker, but a man. Wild-eyed, starving, and desperate. His clothes were shredded, his face thin and sunken. "Stay back!" Jackson yelled. But the man didn't stop. He screamed, a broken sound, and charged, swinging a metal rod. Jackson sidestepped, tripping over a box of bandages. The rod clanged against the wall. Silas moved fast. One swift strike with the axe's flat side knocked the attacker to the ground. The man gasped, then collapsed, unconscious. Jackson leaned against the wall, heart racing. He wasn't infected. Just gone. "Lost it," Silas muttered. "Hiding here so long probably broke him." Jackson stared down at the man. "We can't help him." "Not now." They secured the rest of the supplies and slipped out the back exit. The return trip was tense, quieter than it should have been. Too quiet. Halfway to the garage, they heard the sound again: moans. Low. Dozens of them. They reached a clearing and stopped dead. The street ahead was crawling with walkers. A horde. Silent, for now, but packed tight like a sea of decay. They blocked the main road to the garage. Jackson clenched his jaw. "We can't go that way." "Then what?" Silas asked. Jackson scanned the nearby buildings. One, the old city library, still had an upper window intact. "Rooftop route. If we can get across those buildings, we can flank around and reach the alley." They raced into the library, running up the cracked staircase 2 at a time. The roof access door had to be forced open, but when they burst onto the top, Jackson saw the path, barely. A series of connected roofs, narrow gaps, each a risk, but possible. Behind them, the horde began to shift. Something had drawn their attention. "We have seconds," Jackson hissed. "Go!" 1 leap. 2. Then a narrow board between buildings. Silas nearly fell, but Jackson grabbed his arm. The last building overlooked the alley, just one more jump. They landed hard. Jackson yanked the side entrance to the garage open. Leah met them at the door, panic in her eyes. "What happened?" "Horde's here," Jackson said, tossing her a bag of supplies. "Get what we need. We leave now." Milo limped toward them. "You heard him." There was no rest. No time. Just forward. Always forward. Because behind them, death had already begun to breathe. The sound came first. A low rumble of moans, like distant thunder rolling closer with every breath. Then the vibrations, the unmistakable tremor of hundreds of shambling feet against pavement. It was happening. Leah grabbed the supply bags while Milo, face tight with pain, pulled himself upright with a homemade crutch, a snapped broom handle wrapped in torn bandages. "Did you say horde?" Jackson nodded, already unlocking the rear exit. "Big one. Coming fast. We've got 10 minutes, tops." Silas hoisted Cora over his shoulders, her bandaged side bleeding through the gauze. She was conscious, barely, her head resting against his back. "Where are we going?" "West," Jackson said. "Back through the alleys. There's a construction site near River Street. It has containers, steel ones. Might be a place to hole up or a way out." Leah's eyes flashed. "And if they're already there?" "Then we find another way," Jackson replied. "But we do it moving." The 5 of them burst out into the alley. The morning light was gray, muted by the gathering storm clouds above. Behind them, the low groaning chorus grew louder, closer. They moved as fast as they could. Jackson led the way, crowbar in hand. Leah covered the rear with her baton raised, eyes darting to every window, every rooftop. Milo limped along beside Silas, gritting his teeth with each step, refusing to slow down. Turning the corner, they passed through a fenced yard full of rusted bicycles and toys. Evidence of what life had been. What it would never be again. They reached a narrow street with collapsed storefronts and half-burnt cars. Jackson raised a fist. "Wait." The horde had split. A smaller group, maybe 20 walkers, wandered just ahead, blocking the path to the construction zone. "Too many," Leah said. "Even with weapons." "We don't fight," Jackson replied. "We go through the laundromat." The shattered windows of the old building offered a grim entrance. They filed inside, careful to stay low and quiet. The air reeked of mildew and old detergent. Machines were toppled over, dryers ripped from the walls. Some had bloodstains on them. Old. Dried. Cora whimpered softly. Silas shushed her gently, crouching near the folding tables. She was burning up, feverish. "Keep moving," Jackson whispered. "We're almost there." They reached the back of the laundromat where a service door led into another alley. Jackson pushed it open slowly, and froze. A single walker stood just outside. It hadn't noticed them yet. Its head twitched, sniffing the air. Its arms dangled, hands clawed and twitching. Jackson turned to Silas. "Put her down." Quietly. Silas laid Cora on a blanket. Jackson motioned for Leah to hold the door, then stepped outside. One-on-one. He could handle that. He crept up behind it. One step. Another. He raised his crowbar in. Crunch. Glass underfoot. The walker turned fast, faster than expected, and lunged. Jackson drove the crowbar into its neck, but it didn't go down. The creature clawed at his face, pushing him against the wall. "Jackson!" Leah shouted. Silas rushed out and yanked the thing back. Jackson stumbled away, coughing, as Silas swung his axe, once, twice, until the walker fell, twitching no more. They didn't have time to breathe. More groans echoed now, louder, closer. The main horde had caught up. "Move!" Jackson barked. They ran. Past cracked pavement. Over piles of rubble. Around cars welded to the road by time and rot. The construction site came into view, half-built apartments, skeletal steel frames, and a maze of orange fencing. 2 shipping containers sat near the edge, doors wide open. A miracle. Leah got there first. She cleared the interior. Empty. They all piled in, and Jackson slammed the doors shut just as the first of the horde rounded the corner. Darkness swallowed them. Only the sound of breath, blood, and the pounding fists of the dead on steel echoed in the box. "We're trapped," Milo said between coughs. "They'll wait us out." "No," Jackson whispered, shining his flashlight around. "There's a hatch on the top." He climbed onto a stack of paint cans, reaching up. The hatch was rusted, but it moved. "We wait until dark," he said. "Then we climb out. One at a time. Quietly." Silas sat with Cora cradled in his arms. "She won't make it another day without antibiotics." Leah opened her bag. "She will. We got what we came for." Outside, the moans continued. A steady pressure of death waiting to consume anything that dared move. Inside, 5 hearts beat in unison. Scared. Determined. Alive. And for now, that was enough. The hours crawled by in darkness, the kind so heavy it swallowed thoughts. Inside the steel container, every breath felt like it might echo too loud. Every heartbeat thudded like a drum. Outside, the undead pressed in, hands thumping on metal, fingers scraping across the walls, moans rising and falling like waves. Jackson sat beneath the hatch, flashlight turned off, crowbar resting across his knees. He hadn't moved in an hour. He couldn't. Movement brought sound, and sound brought death. Cora stirred in her brother's arms. Her fever was holding steady thanks to the pills Leah had given her, but her breathing was shallow. Silas whispered to her, brushing sweat from her brow. "Just hold on a little longer, Cor. We're almost through." Jackson didn't believe in almost anymore. In this world, almost got people killed. "We wait until the horde thins," he whispered finally. "Then we go one at a time. I'll lead." Milo shifted, trying not to grunt from the pain in his ankle. "They're not thinning. Just circling." Leah pressed her ear to the wall. "No more banging. Just moaning. They know we're in here, but they're not attacking the walls anymore." "They're waiting us out," Jackson muttered. "Just like always." Then came a sound none of them expected, a horn. Faint, distant, but unmistakable. A vehicle. Somewhere northeast. The horde reacted instantly. From outside, the moans surged, bodies shifting, footsteps moving, away. Leah's eyes lit up. Something's drawing them off. Jackson didn't hesitate. "We go. Now." He stood on the stacked cans and shoved the hatch upward. It groaned but gave way, revealing a cold night sky mottled with clouds. He poked his head out, scanned the rooftops, clear. One by one, they climbed through. Jackson pulled Leah up first, then helped Silas and Cora. Finally, Milo, his hands shaking, managed to crawl out with help. The construction site below was half empty now. A large portion of the horde had turned toward the sound. Those who remained stumbled in confusion. Jackson motioned toward a narrow scaffold leading to the rooftop of a nearby structure. "That's our way out." They moved like ghosts, silent across the metal planks, ducking behind support beams, every creak a threat. Cora, barely conscious, was carried by Silas. Milo followed with grim determination, leaning on his makeshift crutch. Halfway across the site, a loose plank gave way beneath Leah. She caught herself, but the sound echoed like thunder. Walkers below turned as one. "Go!" Jackson hissed. They scrambled up the building's side stairwell, reaching the rooftop just as the first infected began clawing their way up behind them. Jackson stayed at the rear, crowbar ready. When the last of the group reached the top, he turned and kicked the loose scaffold pole. It collapsed with a crash, dropping the lead walker into a pile of concrete rubble. He spun around. "Keep moving." The rooftops gave them the high ground. From up there, the city looked almost peaceful, lit only by starlight, stripped of sound beyond the distant wails of the displaced horde. In the distance, they saw it. A flicker of headlights. A truck, moving fast along the northern road. Silas narrowed his eyes. "Think it's a convoy?" "Too small," Leah said. "One truck. Probably solo." Still, Jackson added, "Whatever pulled the horde, it just saved our lives." They climbed down the far side of the building using an old fire escape. The ground below was quieter now, but Jackson knew better than to trust silence. He led them through narrow alleys, zigzagging between buildings to avoid the main streets. Eventually, they found a safe spot, an old parking garage with only one entrance and a sturdy metal gate. They slipped inside and sealed it behind them. For now, they were hidden. Everyone collapsed into a corner, panting, exhausted. Cora was laid down on a blanket. Leah checked her pulse, still weak, but stable. "She's holding on," she said softly. Barely. Milo leaned against a pillar, eyes half closed. We need a plan. We can't keep running like this. Eventually, we run out of rooftops. Jackson unfolded the map by flashlight. This road here, he pointed, runs parallel to the highway. It leads through the back hills. Remote. Less infected. If we make it to the Ridgeway Tunnel by morning, we're halfway to Echo Ridge. Leah frowned. That tunnel's been rumored blocked for weeks. Rumors also said we'd never survive this far, Jackson replied. Silas looked up. We move at dawn? Jackson nodded. Dawn. Everyone settled in as best they could. Jackson took the first watch, staring out at the city's skeleton. A place where silence was never truly quiet. A world holding its breath, waiting for the next scream. No way back. But in the distance, a spark had lit the night. And that meant hope. The sky turned a pale steel gray as the first hint of dawn crept over the city. Jackson stirred from his post near the edge of the parking garage, blinking through sleep-deprived eyes. His fingers tightened around the crowbar. A single walker shuffled far below on the street, but it didn't notice them. Not yet. Leah woke next, followed by Milo, who winced as he tested his swollen ankle. Silas was already awake, his back against the concrete wall, gently stroking Cora's hair. Her fever had gone down a little, but she remained unconscious, breathing steadily, but weak. Every step they took now was a race against time. If they didn't get her somewhere safer soon, they'd lose her. Jackson gathered the others. We move fast. Ridgeway Tunnel is 2 miles northwest. It's our best shot. Tunnel might be blocked, Milo reminded. Then we climb over it, or find another way. But that road bypasses all major cities. We follow it, we reach Echo Ridge. They left the garage and crossed into the back streets. This part of the city was quieter, untouched since the initial panic. Trees cracked through the sidewalks, vines strangled old billboards, and the only witnesses to their passing were the broken faces of storefront mannequins. The group moved in a tight formation. Jackson led, Leah behind him, Milo limping but steady in the middle, and Silas carrying Cora at the rear. They avoided main intersections, slipping between crumbling houses and rusted playgrounds. The silence wasn't comforting, it was suspicious. After 40 minutes, they reached the overgrown highway that led into Ridgeway Pass. A faded green sign barely clung to its post, Ridgeway Tunnel, 1 mile. Almost there, Leah said, squinting ahead. But then Jackson raised his hand and stopped. Smoke. A thin, steady column rising from the far treeline, just beyond the tunnel entrance. Silas stepped forward. Campfire? Could be, Jackson replied. Or someone burning bodies. Or worse. We check it out, Leah said. Carefully. They crept closer, taking a side path through a drainage ditch. From a small overlook, they saw it. A barricade had been erected across the tunnel mouth, cars stacked, road spikes laid out, and a small fire burning in a steel drum nearby. 3 figures sat by it, armed, alert, and wearing makeshift armor. Raiders. Milo muttered, so much for smooth passage. Jackson dropped behind cover. If they're guarding that tunnel, there's a reason. Either they've secured the other side, or they're using it to trap people. We can't go around, Leah said. That mountain's sheer rock. No side trails. No time. Jackson looked to Silas. We still have those smoke flares? 2, Silas said, unzipping his bag. Then we make a distraction. Draw them away from the front. We slip past or take them out if we have to. We don't stop. Leah's jaw tightened. We're risking everything. We're already out of options, Jackson replied. Let's move. They split into 2 groups. Jackson and Silas flanked left, heading toward the treeline behind the raiders. Leah stayed with Milo and Cora, hidden in the brush near the road. The plan was simple. Jackson would toss the flare into the woods on the opposite side, give the raiders something to chase. That would be the window. Simple didn't mean easy. As Jackson and Silas crouched in position, Jackson pulled the cap off the flare. Ready? Born ready, Silas whispered. Jackson lit it and hurled it into the distance. A trail of thick white smoke erupted, rising fast through the trees. The effect was instant. The raiders jumped up. One barked something unintelligible. Two grabbed rifles and rushed toward the smoke. The third stayed behind, watching the tunnel. Jackson gritted his teeth. One left. Silas nodded. Let's make it 0. They moved fast, silently approaching from the rear. The raider by the fire never saw it coming. Silas swept his leg, and Jackson knocked him out cold with the crowbar. Jackson signaled the others. Leah emerged with Milo and Cora, rushing across the open stretch of highway toward the tunnel entrance. Jackson and Silas cleared a path through the makeshift barricade, pulling aside tires and scrap metal until a narrow passage opened. The tunnel beyond was dark, utter blackness swallowing the road. You sure about this? Milo asked, peering inside. No, Jackson answered. But we don't have time to be sure. Flashlights on, weapons ready, they entered the tunnel. Inside, the world changed. Echoes bounced off the stone walls. Their footsteps sounded like a battalion. The air was damp, laced with mold and rot. Pipes dripped water from above. Graffiti covered the walls, messages scrawled by those who had passed through before them. One read, "We heard screams and kept walking." Cora whimpered in her sleep. Jackson scanned the shadows. "We keep moving. No stops." Halfway through the tunnel, the light from outside disappeared. Only their flashlights remained. Then they heard it, not moaning, but footsteps. Too steady. Too fast. Not walkers. Jackson raised his light, and froze. A figure stood ahead, arm raised. Alive. Human. And not alone. Part 8 will be the final part, the reveal at the end of the tunnel and the fate of the group. Ready for the finale? Part 8, the end of the tunnel. Jackson's flashlight beam landed squarely on the figure standing in the middle of the tunnel. A woman. Tall, weathered, and calm. She didn't flinch. Her rifle stayed lowered, but her eyes were sharp. Behind her, silhouettes emerged from the shadows, others, all armed, dressed in patchwork gear made for survival, not war. They didn't move forward. They didn't speak. Jackson raised a hand, signaling the rest of the group to hold position. "We're not infected," he called out, keeping his voice steady. "We're just trying to get through." The woman studied him for a long moment before lowering her arm. "Then you should know, the tunnel's the edge of Echo Ridge territory." Leah's breath caught. "Echo Ridge is real?" "It's real," the woman said, her voice even. "But we don't take chances. Drop your weapons." Slowly. Silas hesitated. Jackson didn't. He set the crowbar down first, then slid the revolver from his belt and placed it on the ground. The others followed, carefully. Milo grimaced. "She needs help," he said, motioning to Cora, who lay slumped in Silas's arms. "She's burning up." The woman's eyes flicked toward her. She gave a sharp whistle, and two of her people stepped forward, a man with a med kit, and a younger woman holding a lantern. "Let us check her. If she's bitten, this ends here." "She's not," Silas growled. "We've kept her alive through worse than this." The medic knelt beside Cora, checking her pulse, lifting the bandage. "It's clean," he confirmed. "No signs of infection." The leader gave a nod. "We'll take her in." Relief flooded Silas's face, though he said nothing. He just looked down at his sister and closed his eyes. Jackson stepped forward. "I'm Jackson. That's Leah, Milo, Silas, and Cora. We've been on the road for months." "We know," the woman replied. "We've been listening to transmissions. Watching movement along the southern corridors. You're not the only ones looking for sanctuary. Jackson narrowed his eyes. How many made it? From what we can tell. Not many. But we've kept Echo Ridge alive. Off-grid. Shielded. Not perfect, but it's still standing. If you're willing to work and follow rules, you're welcome to try and stay. Jackson exchanged looks with the others. There was hesitation in their eyes, but also hope. Who are you? Leah asked. The woman took a breath, then said simply, call me Marshall. I helped build what's left of Echo Ridge. You'll meet the rest once we get out of this hole. Marshall gestured toward the end of the tunnel. Her people began leading them forward. The group followed, silent, their footsteps lighter now, not because the path was easy, but because for the first time in a long time, they weren't alone. The final stretch of tunnel curved upward, light blooming at the far end. When they stepped into it, Jackson blinked. The world beyond was a paradise, but it was something. Fenced-off buildings. Solar panels. Watchtowers. Gardens. Small homes made of reclaimed materials. And people, actual people, walking, talking, alive. Children. Cora stirred in Silas's arms, blinking against the light. Are we safe? She whispered. Silas smiled, tears filling his eyes. We might be. A gate opened. Inside, guards watched but didn't aim. A group of medics moved toward them. As they entered, Marshall turned back to Jackson. There's no way back to what was. But if you're ready to help us build something better, then maybe there's still a way forward. Jackson looked around. Leah helped Milo sit. Cora was already being tended to by a nurse. A few kids peeked out from behind a greenhouse. He took a deep breath. The air was cleaner here. Not untouched, but different. For the first time since the world ended, he allowed himself to believe. Not in the past. But in the idea that even in a world filled with death, life could still rise from the ruins. And so, with no way back, they walked into the light. End of story. Let me know if you'd like.